Sayonara, my Cintari Sellswords. That's right, we've got the Kassai matchup for you today in the Levia Blitz Best-of-3 series. And Kassai, I honestly find to be an absolutely fascinating hero because you don't see her all too often, and yet she brings a new dimension to the warrior class where all of a sudden a lot of these cards that you normally don't say play in Dorinthia that are all about that second weapon swing really come to fruition. So I find her really, really interesting to play against, and I haven't played against it enough to really know whether it's favored or not for Levia, but it tends to feel pretty even. And the reason this is because if you can't close the game quickly, Kassai is going to generate a ton of free value in the fact that she's going to give her second saber swing its cost reduced to being free, as well as the Valiant Dynamo resetting its battle worn every time she does get those two swings off. So you're basically faced with a hero that's got +1 life turn after turn with this Dynamo abuse. Now, Kassai can't really take the game super late because she is limited by the amount of go-agains she can give her swords, because it's not innate, right? So she needs to give it to her first swing with like Driving Blade, Hit and Run, Spoils of War, or retroactively here with the Glint the Quicksilver. So she can't just keep up this value game forever. So she really tries to end games in that mid-game state where you've traded damage, and then she can be really sneaky, all of a sudden throwing in those attack reaction cards that you're not necessarily expecting in Stroke of Foresight and Out for Blood, along with the just game-ending power of Iron Song Determination. So she's a deck that will trade you down. She'll play pretty aggressive when her hands are good because she's just got all these tall buffs that she can throw right on her attacks. But then she's also got that sneaky closing power. So I think this is a really skilled matchup for the Levia player because the damage trade is going to actually be pretty even. And she might demand your Husk use really, really early just because you can't always play around these attack reactions. So with that said, there's nothing in particularly clever about how you can play this matchup with Levia. It's just your normal mid-range grind, and you do have, of course, more damage available to you in a single turn with cards like Blood Rush Bellow, but other than that, your trades tend to be pretty even with Kassai, and because of that, you'll want to find those cards that just always push your math to be a little bit better in your Ghostlies and Howls. Those are going to come up big in this mid-range trade because you can all of a sudden pull damage from an entirely different zone than the Kassai can. So with that, it's a really interesting matchup, and I had some fun playing these games, so let's check them out. So starting with the roll-off, looks like I got a 5 there compared to Ben's 10. So it is up to Ben, who goes first and second, and he is going to choose to go first here. And now, Ben is someone who has a lot of reps against me on Levia, so I'm expecting that he just goes for the Arsenal here to play it safe and not let me fill a grave. But he's actually going to go ahead and decide to lead off with a Driving Blade into some Cintari Saber Swing. So this, to me, gives me a bit of a read that perhaps he's got an attack reaction that he's trying to sneakily chip in here to go ahead and get me with some damage on turn 1. So making that read, when I'm thinking about blocks here, I'm going to actually go ahead and decide to overblock and block 9 total on that Cintari that was coming in for 5. It's going to gain the +1 because of the attack action blocking with it. So up to 6. So that way, when I block with 9, I'm potentially protecting myself from that +3 attack reaction that he might have. But he's actually going for a different line here that is actually going to be pretty punishing. So with that Sharpened Steel, then he comes in with the Cintari here for 5. Which means I should go ahead and actually take 3 damage on this block, not 2. We didn't catch it in the moment there, but he would have gotten the buff on the Cintari. So I should actually be down 3 life here. But yeah, he did push damage. He did go ahead and get to save Arsenal as well. So I just lost overall that entire trade on my turn 0. Got a little bit too careful overblocking that first Cintari. I probably could have just sat happy blocking 6 and then holding another 2 cards for that follow-up Saber Swing. But what it leads into here is a hand that is not going to be any kind of too explosive immediately. It's a bit more of a setup hand. It's something I definitely want to go ahead, slow down, set up that Blood Rush I have in hand in Arsenal to go ahead and try to find a power turn either in my next turn or a couple hands down the line. So I've got 2 burnable cards in the Barraging Beatdowns, and I'm hoping here that Ben just has to block with cards he doesn't want to block with to make these barraging buffs lose their effect, because he doesn't have non-block, so it's not like I can really deny his ability to go ahead and just take the damage there. But with his decision to go ahead block with 2 cards, that does mean he was forced with whatever was left to be the cards he blocks with. And Spoils of War we did see go down, so pretty happy that that is gone. It is one of the stronger go-agains in his kit, because at just 1 cost it gives a +2 buff, and has some synergy with the copper tokens and the cash-ins that are in a Kassai deck. So happy to see that gone. Like I said, I do have a Blood Rush now set up in Arsenal, so I'm looking to craft a hand that is potentially live for Blood Rush. So when he swings in here with the Cintari Saber, I have 2 cards that I don't really want for a Blood Rush hand in the Sink Below and a Ghostly Visit. So I do want to think a little carefully about the block here. Do I want to go ahead and block with Ghostly first or go straight to the Sink? If I go straight to the Sink, I can sink the Ghostly and hopefully draw something better for Blood Rush, which I actually do in that Eye of Ophidia. So that is now actually going to lead beautifully into this Blood Rush play. Eye of Ophidia, amazing to pitch with your draw cards like Blood Rush here, because I'm going to craft a bit more of the cards I see off the top. So in this instance, I'm looking at a blue Dread Screamer and a red Writhing Beasthulk, and my hand is a blue Wrecker Rump and I believe a red Deadwood. So I don't know which one of those I'm going to discard yet, because we're resolving the Eye's opt effect first. So I don't know whether or not I need to actually dig for the blue or dig for the attack. So I'm going to go ahead and decide to just keep them both on top, I do believe. Yeah, because it's coverage over either of my discards here. Seeing a blue, seeing an attack means no matter which I get rid of, I will draw into the other half that I'm missing. So I do draw those exact 2 cards I saw. I did get to keep that Deadwood Rumbler in hand. I don't quite know if it's a blue or red. I can't see the color strip here. But at least we know, even if it is a red, I have the ability to push 18 if I do want to. And so we can lead off here with the claws very, very happily. Of course, getting that go again because of the Blood Rush. So putting some pressure on Ben. He's really high on his life. And as soon as he starts blocking with his equipment like the Valiant Dynamo, he's just going to start getting the added benefit of shedding that Battle Worn counter turn after turn. So not really scared, I don't think, if I was in his position. Yes, it's going to be a lot of damage, but it's nowhere near the point in the game where it's overwhelming. So it looks like it was that red Deadwood Rumbler, actually, because there we go, pitching it now to come in for 8 on the Writhing Beasthulk, maybe even Dominate. Dominate, really not a relevant keyword right now. I'd love for that to be a red Hungering so I could push the extra 1 damage. But, you know, at least with the 8 attack that it is presenting, I am going to chunk him down to probably around 9 or so. It looks like he's trying not to block with cards in hand. So, you know, it can still be a good turn for me. I have chunked through a ton of his equipment, and potentially through a huge, like more than half his life, all in this 1 turn. And I don't even have any Blood Debt set up yet. But looks like I do pull a card out of hand here, which is fine with me because it looked, from my perspective, like he really didn't want to block. But with the like consistent attacks I was chaining together there in the 5/5/8, Ben was threatened enough here that he did go ahead and block, and it was with a red Iron Song, which is basically just a free 3 damage. So he was deciding that 3 of his life was worth more than 3 of my life in this scenario, because there's always the chance that I don't actually block, and so perhaps Iron Song just wouldn't have done anything on this follow-up turn. So Ben down the card, I think a little too preemptively, thinks he needs to use Courage to pull together this turn. Because as we're going to see in a second, it is a bit of a waste of resources here, because after the Courage, he's going to go ahead and follow up with a source of Go Again for his Cintari swing. In this instance, it's going to be a yellow hit and run. So yellow hit and run costing 0 means that first Cintari has Go Again. Cintari itself now costing 0 because of the Courage. So nothing too crazy on this swing, just coming in for the 2 attack there. Hit and run's not going to give the buff because he hasn't swung with something previously this turn. Now, with myself sitting at 18, I am not behind to go ahead and use Skullcap or anything, but I'm also not in some kind of life threshold where I'm afraid of losing that Carrion Husk. Even if he did pump it by 3, that's where I would normally be under threat of just losing Husk, but I do have a Sigil, so if he brings me down to 13, I could have just Sigiled right back up, so it's just very safe to not have to block these. But there we go. This is where the Courage was actually a misplay, as we can see, because he's pitching anyway for the second swing. So he's floating the one resource, which could have just gone to that first Cintari anyway. So bit of a waste of an equipment piece from this point. But I think it might have just been because I shook him up a bit by forcing out that card from his hand last turn. So with that second swing now providing 4 damage on that Cintari swing, so it's coming in for 6 total. 6 at this point is very threatening because we're looking at either a commitment of an equipment piece to cover up enough for me to not lose Husk, or at least 2 cards. So the 2 cards I'm using to commit here are that Soul Harvest and then a Sigil, just to bring me back up to that happy life threshold of 16. And actually, I should have taken another damage there because of the Cintari, and I didn't notice that we missed it twice, because I know that we caught it on the later swings in the game, at least, with Cintari giving the +1. Ben actually does play Kassai every so often. He really likes the Crucible heroes, so whenever we have our Blitz events, he's on some kind of spicy crew deck, be it KO, Kassai. Seen him on Benji as well. So forgive those 2 misplays now. We should have been at 14 health on my side, which actually not super relevant in terms of like making me miss a Husk early or something, but you know, damage is damage. So on my turn, I was fortunate to not have Blood Debt yet from that Writhing Beast Hulk attack, so I can just slow down, go ahead, swing a Claw, and not feel too terrible about it. But Ben's always going to just take 1 less damage on those turns because of the Valiant Dynamo shedding its Battle Worn. So that was a really, really slow turn. My swing was just for 2 damage, and Ben got to keep an entire hand here. And Kassai with a full hand can potentially do some really nasty things, but very, very fortunate on my end to see that he actually had to pitch reds, all reds, to get that first Driving Blade into Cintari off. So that is just stars aligned for me. It probably means I get to keep my equipment for, or my Carrion Husk equipment specifically, up for another turn cycle, which is really, really important, because I want to use it when Ben would have otherwise had a really strong turn. This is a really mediocre turn, so if his mediocre turn can pull out my Husk, that'd be a big win for him. So just gonna go ahead, double check what my options are here. And this is, like I said, I knew we did catch up to how Cintari's work here, so I am on purpose blocking with a non-attack so that it doesn't give the +1. So I cover up the full 5 on that first Cintari swing, and then I'm pretty safe to take the second one because Husk is not threatened. So then with the cards I'm able to keep here, it's actually nothing too crazy. It is really a really resource-heavy hand in the Wrecker Romp, Blue Deadwood, and the Beast Within. But I am fortunate to have the Dread Screamer from a previous turn set up in Arsenal here, and this is why arsenaling those Blood Debt attacks are so important, because this turn just would have been garbage otherwise, but at least now I can play my overstatted, over-keyworded effects turn after turn because I went ahead and set it up in Arsenal to do so. Because missing a turn here to just play like a Beast Within for 6 would be really, really weak. So I am going to go ahead and forgo my ability to reset my Arsenal for taking this line, but this does mean I can actually the Dread Screamer into the Beast Within pretty handily here. And it's a 12 damage turn. It's nothing crazy. Like I said, I won't be able to reset Arsenal, but by looking at how life is, I know that I'm very likely to lose Husk next turn. So if I'm committing Husk, then that can actually buy me the breathing room to go ahead and reset the Arsenal on this next turn, because I'm looking at blocking 6 with my equipment at minimum anyway. So I'm really just hoping that I draw a hand that's not only live to trade back with, but also has a piece that I would like to Arsenal, because I do have the second Blood Rush in deck, so whenever I can find an extra attack to throw in Arsenal, I would love to do so. But what we see is a really, really awkward hand here in a Ghostly Visit, the Howl, a Fate Foreseen, and a Blue Dread Screamer. So this is not a hand that can easily turn off Blood Debt, not a hand that's very aggressively oriented anyway. But at least with how Ben starts off his turn, he gives me a bit of a route to play to potentially keep Husk again, because he only swings for 2 on that Cintari. So I have the option here to block 2 with equipment. And then if the rest of his turn is just another Cintari swing, I could block with something like a Fate Foreseen and keep Husk for yet another turn. So I'm playing for that line. But he does have a red hit and run, which makes the Cintari now 5 attacks. So I see that. I know Husk is threatened anyway, so I go ahead and drop. But what I'm not expecting here at all is a Nourishing Emptiness to use the go again that second hit and run gave that second Cintari. So now with my equipment gone, holy moly, do I get punished for the line I was taking with blocking equip on that first Cintari swing. So I really, really cannot do anything on that one. And I go ahead and just take the 6 damage. To me, it's not worth it just throwing that Fate Foreseen down, because the 6 damage, it's not like it's threatening lethal. Any bit of it is going to give him the extra card anyway. So now I might as well use the Fate Foreseen as the piece that I'm going to save for Arsenal, because it can still be quite strong when a attack reaction or something comes later in the game. So I at least have this play for 7, but really, gosh, it's not optimal. Howl, Ghostly, those are great. They're not as great when you're playing them from hand. You don't get that extra ability to just play them out of the Banish Zone and use it as like a extra hand, basically, similar to how Chain can. So this play, not only just not very efficient resource-wise, but I'm also not going to turn off Blood Debt, so all of a sudden, that 4 life lead that I had is chipped down to just a 2 life lead. And while I'm feeling decent that I do have a defense reaction in Arsenal and the fact that I did pull some cards out of Ben's hand, as long as he's drawing some kind of go-again source like he is here, then he's never going to break the extra value he's getting in just having that Valiant Dynamo giving that extra life every turn. It's almost like inverse to what Blood Debt's doing. Blood Debt is taking away my life throughout the game every time I don't turn it off. Meanwhile, Ben is getting a free extra life for playing how his hero wants him to. Just another interesting dichotomy in how Blood Debt works compared to what other heroes have in their toolkit. So with this hit and run, it's just the Cintari coming in for 2. I'm not under threat of dying unless that other 2 cards in hand would have been or actually rather, there's just 1 card in hand there. Even if it was an attack reaction, it's not like I'm under threat of dying, so I'm safe to take it. And this does lead into the second Cintari, which is always free. So same thing here. I'm actually not afraid of a pump for 3 if he has it, because I do have that Fate Foreseen in Arsenal. So I can either take it if I want, or go ahead and evaluate my hand in what kind of play I want back into him this turn. And what I'm looking at here is the fact that if I overblock and toss 6 in front of that Cintari, even if he has a +3, nothing's going to go through, and then that just lets me play into a slower but yet still very efficient Endless Maw turn, keeping that Fate Foreseen for when I do see an attack reaction, because the game is now to the point where a defense reaction is going to be so critical in stopping Ben's ability from just ending the game out of nowhere. Because if Ben just thinks that I don't have the defense reaction, because I only have 2 in the deck anyway, and he's seen the sink below, if he thinks that I just don't have it, he might be incentivized to play very greedy, perhaps get into like Reckless Swing or Dominate range or something like that, to hold a hand that he thinks is guaranteed game over because of an attack reaction. So very happy to sit on that Fate Foreseen. Very, very strong card the later in the game we go. And of course, the longer I hold it, the less misses I'm putting in my grave anyway, because my graveyard's looking not amazing. I believe I checked it and there were like 3 or 4 misses, which is, not where we want it, because we're always at that point just saying, if I get truly unlucky, I will just lose to Blood Debt. So of course, I don't want to see that happen, so I'd rather hold on to putting any more non-6s in the graveyard for just just hold off, just really not go for anything like that. But with how Cintari's work, giving the +1 on blocking with attack actions, there sometimes is the incentive to unfortunately block with those non-attacks and fill the grave a bit. So just not super happy with how the graveyard is going to look in a matchup like this. I didn't trim it early enough in the game to get it so I had pure control over it because I blocked so heavy on my turn 0. But would you look at that, actually? Sidetracked for a bit. Would you look at that, though? The fact that I held that Favor Scene paying off in dividends here. Ben just goes for that naked Cintari, thinking this is probably it. He's probably just got it, because if I don't block, then boom, that Out for Blood is gonna punish me. But with that +3 buff he throws on it, I go ahead, react with Fate Foreseen. Now I am blocking 4 on his 5. I do take a little plink. He goes ahead, realizes now, well, the game is not over, so I'm going to glint, try to swing with that second Cintari for free. Bring me down just a little bit further, but he did just pitch the shunt. So bring me down to 1 is not all that relevant in terms of like killing me with some kind of cheeky effect, because I do think this list only has that 1 shunt. So bring me down to 1. I mean, it's relevant, but perhaps it was better to just hold the glint, arsenal it there from in that position, and wait for when I really am forced to block. I mean, I'm forced to block now at 1, obviously, but perhaps I was forced to block even at 3 because of my continued fear of those attack reactions, because now I truly am out of defense reactions. So debatable on whether or not that glint was correct. I'm thinking it wasn't. But here on my end, I do have the Writhing Beast Hulk. My hand was not very strong in that I had a lot of reds there, but at least I'm still able to come in with the Beast Hulk. And of course, there's always the option that it was just game. Hitting the 6 gives it Dominate, and even though he could block with a Dynamo, I'm not expecting he has another shunt, so he would have taken enough for lethal. But with that sigil, with that darn sigil, he is going to survive, actually put himself back up at 3 rather than dead. But even though this turn wasn't the lethal that it potentially could have been, I was able to set up a Boneyard Marauder and Arsenal, which is really, really strong for just fixing even another potentially all-red hand, or even just what I mentioned before of always being able to string together your Blood Debt attackers, because now that you have one in Arsenal, you're just that much more consistent in turning off Blood Debt as the game goes on. So unfortunately, though, the other thing it's really good with is Blood Rush, but I'm forced to block with Blood Rush because of how the Cintari Sabers work. They're going to get that +1 if I block with an attack action. So I just can't afford to do that from this position. I had the Hungering Slaughter Beast in hand, which could have blocked, but it would have pumped by 1. And if we look at here, I'm actually just alive by the skin of my teeth at 1 because of the sigil, because of the Blood Rush block there. So I know that I'm out of Blood Rushes. I also know that my graveyard is not looking good. So I'm rolling multiple action points here, not actually because of the Ghostly Visit. I mean, Ghostly Visit would be great. You're always going to roll if you have the potential to play it. But what I'm actually trying to get multiple action points here for is to play Hungering into Boneyard, because I have so many misses in my graveyard right now. I believe like maybe 6 or so, that I want to get a double Banish 3 turn off so that I trim as many non-6s as possible, and of course more likely to turn off Blood Debt when I swing with 2 of those attacks in the same turn. So even though I'm going to lose my arsenal, the other beauty of swinging in for 7 and then 6 with Ben at 3 is that he's going to be forced to full block. His entire hand is going to go here. Because as we see, he throws in the Valiant Dynamo to block 7 on that Hungering, but then with the Boneyard Marauder following up here, he can't block with just 1 because he will die. It's coming in for 6, so he's forced to block with those 2 cards left in hand, and this guarantees that there's no way he's going to get that Valiant Dynamo counter back on, because he can't swing in both of those Cintaris. So now I've actually docked him a life as well. So we're almost looking at it here that not only did I take all cards from his hand, I basically dealt him a future damage by making it so that he can't get the Battle-Worn counter off Dynamo on this next turn. So I'm very, very happy with how this is looking. And on top of that, the double Banish 3 play did exactly what I wanted it to. One of them hit all 3 6s, and one of them hit all misses. But the fact that Hungering and Boneyard actually don't care whether or not they've hit a 6 or not, it's not like I lost any value in the Boneyard not hitting any 6s. Instead, it was just positive for me because now my graveyard is in a much better state. So right now I do have, I believe, exactly 3 misses in the graveyard right here. So I'm taking a bit of a risk by actually starting with the Dread Screamer. I could have started with the Scabskins roll because in theory, if this Dread Screamer misses on the Banish 3, because there's exactly 3 misses, I could just lose the game. But I'm liking my odds for that not to happen, but of course we start off with 2 misses and I'm fearing for my dear life, but that 3rd miss of the Blood Rush is not hit, thank goodness. And so that means it's actually best case scenario here in that I hit 2 non-6s and a 6. So I'm coming in for 4, go again on that Blue Dread Screamer. And after this is going to resolve here, I will go ahead and I believe be rolling Scabskins, because this is always a position, right, where not only is the Ghostly sitting there, but I actually have another Ghostly in hand. So it wasn't just rolling for potentially an extra like Mandible Claw attack, which, like I said, would never be worth it. Instead, it was truly rolling for Ghostly into Ghostly. And what's even better here is that with the Blue Pitch in hand, that second Ghostly is going to be Howl from Beyond onto the Ghostly. So we're looking at a 15 damage turn off this because of the playables from the Banish here. And Ben just can't block that out. He loses. And, you know, there is something to be said in that we missed 2 damage on those Cintari swings. But honestly, not sure if that really would have changed too much. I think the big turn that would have been different was I'd be forced to block with that Hungering, and then instead just play Boneyard into Ghostly instead of Hungering into Boneyard. So definitely would have been a difference. I'm not sure if the outcome would have actually been different. But anyways, we're on to game 2. Game 2, there will be no mistakes. And with that, we see me going first. And this is actually Ben switching things up. He went first last game. He's going to get to choose who goes first or second this game. And he's deciding, go ahead, let's let Levia go first, because I didn't like how it played out, letting Levia go second last game. So perhaps if Levia goes first, she doesn't get her free card in graveyard that she really wants. But I do draw a barraging, and so that's exactly what I want, right? I don't care if Ben takes the damage, blocks, whatever. What I want is that card engraved. So that works out beautifully for me. Now, I do only set up a yellow Hungering Slaughter Beast in Arsenal, so that's not a great Arsenal card, but it's the attack I had. And like I said, you always do want to throw that attack in Arsenal as more of a priority than anything else. So I'm really looking to just play that when I have kind of an off turn and would rather reset my Arsenal with something better, or of course, off the back of a Blood Rush. Very, very strong. So leading into what Ben's got for me on the flip, he's got a blue Driving Blade, which isn't going to pump that Cintari by too much, just the +1. So I'm going to cover it up fully with that barraging, but the Iron Song I'm going to push an extra 3. And since I do take a cheeky 3 damage right there, I can go ahead and get that Arknight Skullcap value off immediately. And I actually do like using Skullcap earlier in the game if I can, because it protects that Husk for potentially 1 extra turn cycle. And the more opportunities you have to use Husk when your opponent has truly a threatening turn, the better, rather than just using Husk as a last resort when you're under threat of it breaking anyway. So the other beautiful part about me only having a block with that 1 card there was that it set up my hand perfectly for Blood Rush discarding Beast Within. And you just have to love when those plays work. And better than just working, the Blood Rush actually discarding the Beast Within triggers to then banish until you find a 6, right? And it banished a Ghostly first, which is fantastic. Look at that free value setting up the graveyard or the banish zone there into then finding a blue Wrecker Romp. So not only did I get that Ghostly right where I want it, I found a resource card, which is always going to smooth together these Mandible Claw turns. So I'm going to roll Scabskins after playing the 2 Mandible Claws. And this is because the rule is if Ghostly can be played, you roll for it. And so this turn was probably only going to be 18 damage at base. I mean, that's what we're looking at, right? It would have been 18 damage. However, the Ghostly being banished off the Beast Within now gives me the option to go for an extra 4 damage, and it does pay off, which is just freaking fantastic. So all of a sudden, this 18 damage turn turned into 22, and I don't even have Blood Debt. I mean, I took 2 damage to get the Ghostly there and then to draw the Wrecker off the Beast Within, but that was incredibly worth it. We look at that. That's my turn 2, and Ben's down to 8. I mean, he kept his hand here because he wants at least a decent return, but swinging back with blue buffs is nothing too crazy, nothing to write home about, rather. So when he swings in here with just the Cintari for 3, it's not scary. I mean, if he buffs it with a attack reaction, sure, I am now under threat of losing Husk. So I'm not playing around that. I think if he goes ahead and actually has it, then you know what? I will be out of luck here. I will lose Husk. But because that Cintari Saber had go again anyway, there was gonna be another swing. So by going ahead and just kind of letting this happen, it's not ideal. I'm basically calling it that Ben doesn't have it, but he did. And at least I can go ahead and use the Husk for 2 life, because he always could have followed up that Cintari with that free Cintari. So Husk buying me 2 life, not great. Got a little bit greedy with it there, but I had such a lead from the Blood Rush turn that I'm kind of happy in that, because Ben had the attack reaction, it means he didn't keep a card for Arsenal. So this is now me with an Arsenal advantage, me with a health advantage. I'm going to go ahead, try for that Scabskins roll, but it doesn't pay off. In fact, it's worst case in that it rolls a 1, but Gamblers bails me out so that it's not absolute worst case in a 1 into a 1. Instead, it just becomes a very subpar turn of coming in for 6, and this is really going to buy Ben a huge avenue back into this game, because I had an explosive start here, but now I've lost my safety net in Gambler's Gloves. I've also not come in with anything above par at all, and I will be wasting cards in hand. So this was really poor by me, because actually if my turn was contingent upon rolling Scabskins anyway, then I should have overblocked that first Cintari, because why would I want to make my turn completely contingent on Scabskins? It makes no sense. So yeah, this was me just being a little bit too comfy with my lead, being a little bit too greedy with the damage in the way it was swinging. But because of that, yeah, big mistakes made here, hoping that it doesn't cost me the game. So here we go. These are the learning opportunities that come up. I love watching these back because I think I play Levia pretty well, but I'm always nitpicking the gameplay decisions I'm making, because I think a lot of it is, it's contextual, of course, but when I'm sitting there on the table, I'm normally always thinking I'm in some kind of place in the tempo game that perhaps I'm not if you zoom out a bit. And that's what we're finding out here. Even though I'm ahead, it doesn't mean that relying on Scabskins to stay ahead is the right line at all. So very cool to see that there's lines that do punish me. You can't just always play as if you're ahead and that your luck will be, above average. No, that's not the right way to play. So we're seeing the punish. We're seeing Ben being able to return with a decent hand here. He still took some damage on that last turn, but he comes in with that Cintari, buffed up for 5. I'm going to just eat it. And then he hit and runs to come in with that Cintari for 4 base. Now, he might be able to do something cheeky with that go again, like I was caught off guard with last game on that Nourishing, but he doesn't have another pitch card, so I'm feeling pretty good in that he doesn't likely have anything that's going to punish me if now I go ahead and block, because he can't even pay for a attack reaction unless it's the, I guess, Glint or the Iron Song response. So he is going to Glint, but once again, this is actually Ben using Glints really aggressively. Last game, he decided not to Arsenal 1, and this game he's actually choosing to not Arsenal 1 again and just played out to try to cycle a different card for Arsenal. And I don't know if that's right. I mean, it's true that there's not many cards that are like purely pitch cards in Kassai. I mean, there's like the blue second swings, I guess. They're not very good, and he did just pitch one, so maybe he's feeling the deck, basically saying, as long as I draw, 80% of what the cards are in here, I'll be happy with that Arsenal is. So maybe that was okay. But then on the flip side here, I'm going to go ahead and return with an Endless Maw. And this is once again just very questionable why I blocked this way, because I'm gonna burn an extra card in hand here. It's just something I didn't block with, something I didn't play, and that means I just wasted life to be where I am here. So really just think these are some unfortunate decisions that are being made on my end, but coming in for 9 still feels really good. Obviously, it's above rate off a 2-card hand, but I kept a 3-card hand, so I should be doing more than that, actually, but I'm just not. And, I'm definitely not going to try to roll scabs to get off an extra attack from this kind of position, because a 1 is just going to lose me the game. Oh, but would you look at that, actually? Tricked myself on that one. That last card in hand was a sigil. Oh boy, look at that. I got way too critical of my own plays there. It was a sigil. We're all good. Everything's good. Calm down, everybody. I played that right. So with that, we then get to dig deeper into the deck. That's great. Dig that full 4 cards deeper into hopefully another Blood Rush, or another strong play in a Red Dread Screamer or something. But Ben now correctly using his Courage of Bladehold into that spoils, because he didn't have enough pitch to play that first Cintari. It was just a red Out for Blood that he pitched there. So Cintari now coming in for 4 with Go again, because that spoils. This is always going to actually equal 6 damage because he can swing that second Cintari for free. So I'm not looking at lethal if I just say no blocks, no blocks. But why go that low if there are cards in hand that I do want to burn? It's kind of the thought process, right? So if I keep blocking with these non-attack actions, right, then no free damage is being leaked through on the Cintari Saber's end. He does get to trigger Iron Song. This is not great, but it's still not lethal damage. I basically traded 3 life for a card that dealt 3, so nothing truly different. He could have just arsenaled that and it would have been the same equivalent 3 damage on a later turn. So at least this is like more information up front. He's no longer hiding that card in arsenal on my end here. It's not something I need to play around now. So just being honest with how our life is, guys. Nothing too cheeky with these reactions. So then on my end, I have what is a pretty good 2-card hand in positions like this, because my blood debt's not high enough to actually kill me. But what really stinks about what played out here is that hitting a 6 would have been great, and that I could just turn off Blood Debt, but I discard the second worst target in the deck. If I discarded like a Beast Within and then banished 4 cards, took 4 and died, that would have been the worst. Second worst literally is discarding that Blood Rush, because in my mind, that card basically says you win the game, and there it is, just gone. So very unfortunate to see that, but with how the damage traded, it did put Ben at 2 life, and we love 2 life as Brute players because we've got this pretty cheeky card in Reckless Swing, and would you look at it, there it is, sealing up Game 2. GG's to Ben.